community charter and technical school serves more students than many state universities.
We have 14,000 students and 750 employees.
Their student population is mostly immigrants and refugees needing to learn English and secure jobs, a vital lifeline for many. The school has dozens of sites and hundreds of millions in public funds. Oversight of this massive operation falls to its 9 board members. It's a lot of responsibility, and yet...
And do we have any idea how much money was spent on this particular contract?
Highlands Board has not always kept track of all their spending.
So where's that gone? But where is that gone?
After several ABC 10 reports aired, California legislators called on the state's watchdog, the California auditor,
to investigate this Highlands Charter situation.
Just 4 days after the audit was requested, Highlands Board started holding special meetings to approve several large contracts for things like a custom phone app, attorney's fees, and quote, back office services. In total, 23 contracts over $100,000 were approved in both special and regular board meetings between May and August 2024, according to documents, adding up to more than $30 million in public funds.
All those in favor?
Aye.
ABC 10 has attended a year and a half of board meetings. We've rarely seen the board approve contracts until now.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
But here's the problem.
I have a question then. Have we already spent money?
Most of this money is already gone, spent.
All of these contracts are and the dollar amounts are amounts that have already been expended.
This means Highlands spent millions of your tax dollars without full oversight from its board, violating their own policy requiring board approval for these contracts over $100,000.
These were never approved by us. They were all over
No, I
$100,000.
understand.
My vote is conditional in the sense that in the future, we adhere to our fiscal policies.
Raising questions about where millions have gone, even from board members.
It's a money issue, and I want to know where the money's gone, that's all.
No one's looking at them saying, hey, you're not complying with your own rules that you made for yourself. And that's why you have to backtrack and look at all the money that was spent.
Former Highlands teacher Araceli Perez has been keeping her eyes on the money.
There's quite a bit of money being spent outside of the classroom that probably would be better spent on instruction.
She worked at Highlands from 2014 to 2018 and says during those years she helped compile the LCAP, the Local Control and Accountability Plan, an important report that goes to the state justifying how a school spends public money. For the LCAP report, Perez says Highlands leadership instructed her to
just kind of scour the budgets and see how we can put that money in to say we spent it in the different areas and kind of write it off.
Write it off, she says, meaning funds were spent first and fit into the plan later.
Like the Christmas party was written off as a field study, so I was very uncomfortable with doing things like that.
Highlands denies these claims, saying they comply with all rules and regulations about the LCAP and that Perez did not work in their finance department and was not responsible for processing any financial transactions on behalf of Highlands. Yet 3 sources who worked there with Perez tell ABC 10 she was deeply involved, including Highlands co-founder Jacob Walker.
She absolutely did the LCAP.
Perez provided ABC 10 former drafts of the LCAP she worked on, along with 2 letters of recommendation from 2018. Highlands board member Sonia Cameron praised Perez's ability to tackle anything, including the budget. Former Highlands executive director Doc Smith said she's, quote, been integral in preparing our school's LCAP for the past 2 years. Perez wasn't alone in her concerns about Highlands LCAP.
I had concerns that we didn't spend the money the way that it was said in the LCAP.
And Lindsay Curtis, the former head of Highlands Homeless Services, said she never saw funds the LCAP reported were spent on her department.
Like, where was the rest of this money and how, like, what could that have been used for?
In total, 5 sources, including a current administrator at Highlands, allege Highlands wrote off expenses in their LCAPs for years. Highlands says they have annual independent audits that did not find any issues in regards to their LCAP when Perez worked there.
But it's more just making sure the codes match up. There's not really any looking at, was this really spent that way?
ABC 10 reviewed the last 3 independent audits of Highlands. While the audits provide a high level of confidence, they admit there are limits when it comes to spotting fraud or intentional errors. Perez says after voicing her concern about the LCAP,
They told me, put the computer down on the desk, give us your keys. We've decided to go in another direction.
Do you feel like that was retaliation against you speaking out?
Yes, I think it was 100% retaliation. However, I loved Highlands so much that when they let me go, I didn't even file for unemployment. I didn't file for unemployment, I didn't sue them, because I said I didn't do this for the money. I just did this for the community.
A community she understands firsthand.
I speak English well, but English isn't my first language. I absolutely believe in the mission.
That's why, even after being removed from her job,
Who are these consultants that are getting so much money?
she says she has continued to monitor things and blow the whistle to both Highlands and their oversight agency, Twin Rivers Unified School District. Highlands receives public funds for each student in class, and with 14,000 students, it adds up. Over the past 6 years, the school got over $450 million from the state records show, but only a few students graduate. The California Department of Education reports in the 2023-2024 school year, Highlands' online site, called SICA, had a 16.9% graduation rate. And in person, Highlands had a 2.8% graduation rate. So many ask, is the money really benefiting the students?
I think as the budget expanded, the temptation expanded.
Perez is one of 40 sources who question how Highlands has spent millions. So we looked at their credit card statements. They show spending at places like Topgolf, where the school spent nearly $82,000 for 6 holiday and staff parties between 2021 and 2023. Stays at 4- and 5-star hotels like the Ritz-Carlton in Hawaii, the Hotel del Coronado in San Diego, the Palazzo at the Venetian in Las Vegas, among many others. And flights booked for board members to places like Las Vegas, Orange County, and Paris, France. Meanwhile, California's budget has fallen into a deficit, impacting education hard.
And tonight, we now know the list of schools being considered for closure as San Francisco Unified grapples with a $400 million budget deficit.
A current administrator tells ABC 10 that Highlands leadership used conferences to go to luxury destinations and stay at expensive hotels, and that there's a group of select employees who travel the most. Credit card statements confirm this. Former executive director Doc Smith took the most flights, over 50 in a little over 2 years, followed by 7 members of his leadership team, and Smith's own son, a member of Highlands' IT team, was among the top flyers. When we asked why public funds were used for extensive travel, Highlands said 525 flights were for an all-staff professional development trip to San Diego. However, that only explains 38% of the 1,300 flights booked from November 2021 to January 2024. When pressed further, Highlands called our questions sensational and misleading, saying travel to conferences is standard for schools. They provided a comparison of travel spent by local districts. ABC 10 reviewed these numbers for some districts. Highlands spent slightly less on travel, yet it has significantly fewer employees. The California Department of Education confirmed some districts, like Sacramento City Unified, include student and parent travel in this budget, while Highlands' spending was for staff travel alone.
So moved.
The board says they operate openly, but when we try to talk with them,
Do you mind if we ask you a couple questions?
I don't have anything to say at this time.
We're just wondering if
ABC 10 has requested interviews with Highlands board 5 times.
I truly do want to speak with you and include your voice.
They continue to decline our requests for interviews. When we emailed to ask why the board is retroactively approving contracts, they said there were, quote, inconsistencies, but would not provide further details. So we went to their board meeting and asked,
why are you having these special meetings and approving these contracts now?
They again gave no answer, so we sent Highlands a list of questions. They responded with a lengthy letter, saying in part those contracts were brought to the board to ensure they complied with the board policy, and that in some cases initially less than $100,000 had been spent under the contract, and they were subsequently brought to the board because they had only later crossed that threshold. They also filmed their executive director reading their responses.
We have not agreed and will not agree to an interview with you or your station in the same way no other educational agency has agreed to be interviewed by you, because it's clear you don't understand how the educational system in California works.
Throughout their response, they repeatedly threatened to sue us.
Highlands reserves the right to sue ABC 10 for monetary damages.
During all staff meetings, Executive Director Bill McGuire criticized our reporting.
We have ABC 10 and some of our friends that are still trying to bully us and have their false narrative come true.
Yet Highlands' actions suggest they changed practices after our reports aired. In response to our questions, Highlands outlined 18 changes they're making, changes to the very issues uncovered in our reporting. And in staff meetings, they said even more changes are coming, like to how they take attendance, a major focus of our reporting.
We have multiple systems and we need to come with one.
They also wrote not all of your reporting has been inaccurate or off base, and Highlands needed to improve in some areas. McGuire also told his staff,
we made mistakes in the past and how we can make sure that we don't make those mistakes in the future.
Yet they also targeted Perez, saying,
ABC 10 and their, I'll say their informant or chief source, Araceli Perez, who really have a goal of ensuring that Highlands is not reauthorized.
We've repeatedly told Highlands Perez is one of 40 sources. Others include current employees who gave us these recordings of staff meetings. All expressed concern over a lack of oversight from Highlands board.
They don't have an elected board like school boards that are accountable to people. They're self-appointed and they can stay on for as long as they want.
Highlands board also chooses their school's top leader, like Doc Smith. He was on their board before being chosen to be Highlands executive director.
So when he suggested things, people were like, oh, that's a great idea. And so it became kind of like a rubber stamping body.
Instead of providing rigorous oversight, the board often fell in line, sources say, following Doc without question. This mindset is reflected in their votes. Between September 3rd, 2021 and August 15th, 2024, the Highlands board held 74 meetings. In all of those sessions, board members broke from the pack, voting no in just 5 meetings. When we asked Highlands about this, they said,
the HCCS Board of Directors provides oversight, fiduciary accountability, and leadership to HCCS. They are accomplished and committed individuals doing what's best for the school.
After ABC 10's investigation aired and the state audit was announced, Smith retired.
The opportunity that I had to assume the role of executive director of this school was the greatest pleasure of my life.
In a settlement agreement between Doc and Highlands, they agreed he'd voluntarily resign, walking away with a severance payment of over $260,000. The June agreement also said the board would consider indemnification, or covering Doc's legal expenses if he were to be criminally charged or named in civil litigation in the future. The agreement should remain private and confidential, it said, even though it's a public record. ABC 10's legal team had to formally demand its release. When we asked about Smith's agreement, they said,
Murdoch Smith amicably retired from HCCS. The details of his retirement are confidential personnel matter.
After Doc retired, the board selected Bill McGuire to take over as executive director.
I'd like to welcome Bill McGuire.
McGuire's salary, $450,000 for the school year. He's making more than Doc, more than other district superintendents in California who have far more students. Even more than Stephen Martinez, the superintendent of Twin Rivers, the district that regulates and authorizes Highlands. Highlands board said they're paying McGuire this amount because of his experience, which provides particular value to the organization at a time when it's needing to respond to audits, not just from the state, but also from Twin Rivers. The school district launched their own audit into Highlands following ABC 10's reporting. But Bill's experience is from Twin Rivers. He was Twin Rivers deputy superintendent, the right-hand man of Superintendent Stephen Martinez.
$1,325 a day in pay.
In 2019, news coverage shows protests over Twin Rivers proposing to up his salary, even though the district was considering closing schools to cover a severe budget deficit. A month later, Bill retired, but he still has close ties to the district as his wife also worked there, and his daughter and son-in-law currently work at Twin Rivers. We asked Twin Rivers how they can fairly audit and regulate Highlands if the new executive director has such close ties to the district. Twin Rivers said they can't answer our questions because they are being audited too by the state. Sources raised concern about Twin Rivers' audit, including a former employee who emailed the district on behalf of current anonymous Highlands staff fearing retaliation. The email, shared with ABC 10, claimed Highlands administrators are present or nearby during auditor interviews, creating an intimidating environment. And in an all-staff meeting, McGuire also asked employees to tell him if they spoke with the Twin Rivers auditor.
So if you could just put in if you met with Dennis, if you talked with Dennis, if you just yes, no.
So we took these concerns and our questions to Dr. Bruce Baker, one of the nation's top education finance experts.
I don't think the district is the appropriate authorizer here.
Dr. Baker has researched charter schools for decades.
There's this circular relationship between the authorizer and the board. It needs to be independent.
Bill McGuire and his family have deep ties to Highlands, long before he became executive director. After leaving Twin Rivers, he began consulting, with Highlands as one of his clients. You may have noticed him in those special board meetings. He's the one advising the board through retroactively approving the contracts, including contracts for his own company, California School Inspections. In the past year and a half, records show McGuire and his wife brought in over $301,600 from Highlands through their consulting company. And between October 2023 and July 2024, Highlands paid Bill's son-in-law, Micah Simmons, $25,000 for independent contracting services. During that time, Simmons was an employee of Twin Rivers. He still works there. We asked Twin Rivers how they justify allowing one of their employees to be paid from the same entity they regulate. They did not answer this question. Highlands responded saying,
Dr. Simmons was hired prior to Mr. McGuire being named executive director, and incidentally without Mr. McGuire's knowledge. Dr. Simmons is a deputy principal on special assignment working for the Twin Rivers Unified School District Athletic Program, is not responsible oversight of HCA whatsoever, and does not work with the Charter Oversight Department. Thus, there is no conflict of interest.
While consulting, Highlands paid for Bill to travel to San Diego and Hawaii, credit card statements show. The Hawaii trip was for the Independent Voter Project, an exclusive political and lobbying event, Highlands said, and Bill was a presenter there and in San Diego. After the board appointed him as executive director, they said it voided all other agreements between Bill's consulting company and Highlands, but they also wrote his wife could still consult for Highlands under his company, as her contract shall be managed by the board president. The same board that violated their own policy and had to back approve $30 million in contracts.
To me, it's an acknowledgement by the board that maybe they should have been reporting these things.
I always think, who's watching the watchers?
Everyone overseeing Highlands is connected. The executive director reports to Highlands Board, which is regulated by Twin Rivers, and Twin Rivers has close ties to Highlands executive director. Highlands and McGuire say that any history or relationships with Twin Rivers do not impact how they operate, like in this staff meeting.
How could Twin Rivers actually do oversight over us because of the relationships I have with the district? Again, the only reason this is here and this is a question in relationship to my integrity and how it applies to you is because they want to get rid of me.
But Dr. Baker says all these close connections are why the state should be overseeing charter schools like Highlands.
Because when you do it through the district, then the district is part of the game.
Twin Rivers receives millions from Highlands for oversight and facility fees, which is a percentage of Highlands' total revenues. As a result of ABC 10's probing, the Department of Education issued a notice of concern letter to Highlands, but later delegated all follow-up to Twin Rivers. In writing, the department said they monitored Twin Rivers' response and provided them with technical assistance. Baker says it's not enough.
It's the state that's handing out that money or controlling the way that money is distributed that needs to be able to directly oversee and step in.
10 years ago, he said the same thing in his published research that called for major changes to the charter school system.
We've waited more than 10 years to really do anything about this.
The duty lies with the legislature to make laws that hold them accountable.
Until change comes, questions will remain about oversight of these funds that come from you, Californians.
And nearly all of their funding comes from taxpayer support.